It is getting close, folks. With just over a month ahead until the voters head to the polls. Pix 11 News, your local election headquarters, and this morning highlights from the first and only vice presidential debate between Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz, which was basically cordial.
Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border.
I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it.
So the big question is, was it enough to sway undecided voters? Well, Dan Cassino, political science professor at Fairleigh Dickinson University, joining us this morning to weigh in on what each of the candidates delivered last night. So good morning to you, Dan. Thanks for taking the time to be with us this morning.
Good morning, Hazel.
I mean, what a big difference, right? The tone between last night's debate and last month's presidential debate. It's being described by some as normal. I mean, the candidates were super gracious to each other.
Yeah, this is actually, our younger viewers will not remember, this is what all presidential debates used to be like. Prior to Donald Trump, these were candidates talking about issues, largely being cordial, complimenting each other occasionally. This is the old normal. It's certainly not the new normal. And it actually reminds me most of the debate in 2000 between vice presidential candidates, where everyone said, boy, can we just get these people running instead? This seems a lot more reasonable.
Sure is. Dan, let's talk about J.D. Vance. A lot of people think he came across more polished than Walz, who isn't quite as experienced as a debater. Do you think Vance took advantage of that inexperience?
So we do know from the instant polls that came out last night that people were more surprised by how Vance did. He had a much lower favorability ratings going into it, and people tend to say, yeah, he did a pretty good job. He looked like he could take over for president if he needed to, and people's views towards him softened a little bit. Walz was generally better liked going into it, and comes out of it seemingly still somewwhat better liked.
Yeah, he did seem a little bit nervous at the beginning there before he finally got his footing, Governor Walz meaning. But, you know, he could have gone after J.D. Vance, right, especially on the issue of abortion. Let's listen to what he had to say. Let's listen to that exchange and then talk about it on the other side.
California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy.
This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women. We trust doctors.
Dan, do you think that was a missed opportunity for Democrats?
Not necessarily. So the question here is, you know, are we bringing up the fact that we are talking about abortion? And this is an issue that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance do not want to talk about. They don't want to be spending this, you know, we're going only a month before the election. This is not the issue they want to talk about. They want to talk about immigration. They want to talk about crime. They want to talk about the economy. As long as we're talking about abortion, that's generally bad for Donald Trump because his view on abortion is generally not as popular. They are trying to reframe it and saying, no, we're not against abortion. We just think it should be up to the states. And if the states want to do things that we disagree with, well, we're just going to let them. And we should note there has been also some disagreement within the campaign about what to do about this. Should they say we're going to go for a ban at some point? And J.D. Vance was going back and forth on that a little bit.
Yeah. All right, here's a moment for you. J.D. Vance credited his running mate for a peaceful transition of power during the last election. Walz wasn't having it. Let's listen into that.
Deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
It's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country.
All right, weigh in on that one, Dan. Do you think J.D. defended himself well there?
I actually think the biggest problem J.D. Vance said right there was the clip that wasn't shown, where he refused to say that Donald Trump didn't win the 2020 election. And it's understandable he didn't want to say that, because Donald Trump was in fact watching the debate and live, posting throughout it on social media. And that would have been really bad for him if he'd said, yes, of course, Donald Trump did lose in 2020, as we know. So this is what actually the Democrats are cutting up as the ad from this debate is, they're still not saying that they lost. They're still incapable of admitting they lost. And at the end of the day, that's what really matters in these VP debates is what are we issues talking about afterwards? What are we going to spend the next 3 or 4 days talking about? Because opportunity costs really matter here. There's 30 days for the election. People are already voting by mail. And if this is what we're talking about, again, that's not an issue Donald Trump and J.D. Vance want to be talking about.
But real quickly, Dan, historically, has the vice presidential debate even had much of an effect?
No, there are not any voters out there saying, boy, I really like Donald Trump, I don't like J.D. Vance, so I can't vote for him. These voters don't exist. What they do is they exist to reinforce the narrative the campaigns are trying to put forward. I think both of them did a reasonable job of that. And I think even though the debate, I think, was largely going to be seen as tied, I think Walz probably got a little more points on this just because he was able to bring up January 20th and January 6th.
All right, Dan Cassino, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.